Hello and welcome to another episode of WhichWayPolitics. Today myself and Matt will be looking at the emergency statement Kier Starmer made yesterday in Parliament regarding Lord Mandelson and his appointment to be US Ambassador.
It'll be especially focused on the reactions of politicians in Parliament yesterday.
A lot of unparliamentary language.
Yes, we are going to talk about that as well, about those boundaries and whether they should be set, or whether what Lee Anderson and Zara Sultana did was just a tactic. They knew the rules and just decided to break them, knowing that there was a small punishment but perhaps a greater reward from their electorate.
I think there's two ways to look at this. First is exposure. What is the exposure you get from breaking the rules?
Oh, Dennis Skinner's,
Dennis Skinner. I'm sure people who don't know politics know Dennis Skinner, Dodgy Dave.
Yeah.
And
even back in the 80s and 90s, he was being thrown out of Parliament.
He's been there a while.
Despite the aggressive sort of stance he takes, in terms of the use of his language in Parliament, he's never really labelled as just as populist as Reform or Zara Sultana and Zach Polanski are, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think so there is definitely an element of exposure, and it makes you this kind of infamous political figure.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there is the argument that you are just sticking up for your constituents. This is a indirect democracy.
Like, oh, he's a fighter.
Representative. Yeah, so they want to see the likes of Lee Anderson, Zara Sultana standing up for them, because also they're not represented as they are. Say you party, is it your party? Your party, sorry. Your party has 100,000 members, or however many members they have. Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn only represent constituencies of around, I personally don't know, I think it's about maybe 50 to 100k. So they're not representing the whole spectrum of your party members, are they? So they've got two members in Parliament, but they've got such a massive backing from the electorate, they need their voices heard. So when they get these moments and they get to ask the Prime Minister questions, which, in all fairness, if you get to ask the Prime Minister a question, do you really stand up and call him a liar? Personally, no.
Well, it depends on which party you're from. If you're from,
it doesn't matter what party you're from.
I think it does, because if you're from your party and your party's tiny in Parliament,
well, this is what I'm saying. Want to representativeness.
Well, yeah, and with Reform, it's the same sort of thing. They've got a massive. They're growing in the polls. They were until now. Now they've sort of reached this peak, and I think they've dropped a little bit. And in Parliament, they've only got 5. Now just 4 MPs. So it's. What was it?
Who's
5?
that?
Well, no, Rupert Lowe left.
Reform.
Yeah, Reform.
Got about 7, mate.
7.
Yeah, got about 7.
Yes. Sorry, I made a mistake there. Yeah, but it's because Rupert Lowe left that.
I understand where you're coming from, but it's about being diplomatic, and we have parliamentary rules for a reason. Otherwise, we'd descend into chaos and anarchy, wouldn't we, with all these extremist parties? So it's about just staying calm.
Well, the rules were enforced. It's not as if they set off a smoke bomb as was done in Serbian Parliament. If you've ever seen,
I did see that clip.
Yeah,
Did you see Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle though sat there, and I think he's quite annoyed at all of this. Personally, he's a big stickler for the rules, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Obviously we don't know him personally, but from what we've seen, it's evidential to say. It's evidential to say that he follows ministerial code to the letter, and he expects everyone in Parliament to follow parliamentary code as well. So no matter who you are, no matter what party you're from, if you're speaking out of turn, he will just simply send you out of Parliament, which is what we saw with Zara Sultana.
And it's fair enough. And I think Zara Sultana and Lee Anderson were counting on it, because it's this sort of image of an establishment that wants to get rid of them, that wants their voice silenced. That's the kind of image they want to reproduce, which is a bit misleading to the public, I think, because I think it's a hallmark of our democracy that it's very civilised. There's civil discourse in Parliament, and I think. Well, I prefer that any day over the smoke bombs in
of course you would. I mean, it's how it works. What I find really interesting, which I hope we do get to talk about today, though, is that there's not there's never really an element of surprise in Parliament. You always know what you're going into, somewhat, right? You're not really going to get ambushed. And this is what Kemi Badenoch was doing with her speech. She outlined 6 points to Kier Starmer, 6 questions. She said she took the unprecedented step of sending the questions to Kier Starmer beforehand, so he was prepared to answer to her and the opposition.
Very
and
fair.
All members and
very fair. And a bit of like a, bit disrespectful in a sense, a little bit like, I'm gonna just give you this, this little, you can't get out of this, but I'm gonna just give you a chance. It's like, it's very, very bold move.
Yeah, and not only that, but she also sent the letter and the points to the public as well.
Yeah.
She said
very transparent as well, which is really nice.
It's really transparent, not like the Conservative Party.
Why'd you say that?
Given Partygate, given
all
their scandals.
Well, that was a different leadership back then. This is bad now. This is a new face of the Conservative Party. But maybe your point stands.
New dog, old tricks. You know how the saying goes. Personally, the Conservative Party, I think they're winning at the minute with this. They found Labour's weak point and they're pushing on it. And this is it's like the Conservative Party can just sit there and do nothing. Labour are giving them this. They're gifting this to them.
This is the same thing that happened back then when the Conservatives were in power. That Labour, they didn't have this clear plan that people were asking for, and yet they won over 400 seats.
Yeah. Labour didn't win the 2024 election. Conservatives lost the election, which is kind of what we're seeing right now. And I think this could be the lead up to a vote of no confidence, Matt. Maybe. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but I personally think if every leader of every major party in Parliament has called for his resignation and he's not done it, there are ways to force him out. There are nuclear options.
Well, see, it would seem nice if there was, at least to the parties that are outside of government, if there was a system where if all of them said that there should be a vote of confidence, that there should be one. But you're forgetting that there's one very crucial leader left, and he's the greatest one in Parliament at the moment in terms of seats, and that's Kier Starmer. And as long as he doesn't want to resign, I think it's very unlikely that he will resign or even face a vote of no confidence.
So you think it's likely? Yeah.
I think it's unlikely at the moment. I think it will take another scandal, because if you look at Peter Mandelson, I think people don't like what's happened. People really don't trust Kier Starmer over it. But I think economics have proven much more. Economic crises have proven much more effective at getting people out of government. I mean, if you saw what happened with Liz Truss, whether you agree with the mini budget or not, her very hasty approach to the media, and I forgot the exact details of the situation, but the fact that the policy wasn't designed to come in a few months later and was just too hasty.
Kind of forced the mini budget through, didn't she?
And this made the markets react wildly, and naturally that forced her resignation, because people just did not trust her as an administrator of the most important part of government in the modern Western world.
Okay, although you're very economically minded and you'd like to see an economic reason for things, you've got to think about Tony Blair. I mean, yeah. You got to think about Tony Blair. You got to think about Boris Johnson. Who else? You've got to think about Theresa May, David Cameron. None of them were specifically economic reasons why they left.
True, but
Blair, Iraq, Tony.
I'd say that's very economic.
No, it's not. David Cameron left because of Brexit. Theresa May left because of Brexit. Boris Johnson left because of Partygate and coronavirus.
Well, to be fair, they didn't leave. Well, there's economic aspects, but it's not the reason why he left. Yeah, that's true. But you have to. I'm talking about magnitude. Like it's more. Maybe you're right. Your point. Yeah, I stand corrected on specifically economics. But what I'm saying is that the magnitude has to affect almost everyone. It has to be. With Iraq, it's like it's just such a great event, such great magnitude that of course it's going to cause lots of controversy. Same with the mini budget. But with Peter Mandelson, yes, it's a sign that our Prime Minister has been very untrustworthy and has been very very lax on national security, but I don't think people respond to breaches of national security that are obvious rather than risks. A risk isn't.
I understand what you mean. This wasn't a deliberate attempt at breaching national security.
Well, it could have been. I'm not making the allegation.
No. But Kier Starmer. So this is what the ministerial code says. The ministerial code says you should not knowingly mislead Parliament when you say things. He has gone up to Parliament many times and said, look, we have not misled you. The process taken to appoint Peter Mandelson was sound. Right? That's what he said on multiple occasions. That's obviously me paraphrasing, but it's the extent to what he said. Now he's come to Parliament with this big statement and said, by the way, I wasn't told. So every single time he'd come to Parliament and said that Peter Mandelson's appointment was sound, quote unquote, he was lying. Yeah. He was inadvertently lying. He was asked, he was asked by a backbench MP yesterday after his speech if he had inadvertently misled Parliament. He responded with no. Well, that's just not true.
Yeah, because even if it's inadvertent,
he's still done it.
Yeah, even if it was if it's inadvertent, he should take responsibility and say, I'm sorry, but that's a sign of weakness.
It doesn't matter if he takes responsibility or not. That very question, when he's just been asked, like directly it could have been by one of his own MPs. I'm not completely sure who asked it, but you've been asked, have you inadvertently misled Parliament? If you say no to that question, then you're just lying, because inadvertently, this is indirectly, so we're not saying you have specifically done it on purpose, maliciously, but you have inadvertently done it. He's a barrister. He should know the language.
Yeah.
That is the definition of what he has done. Accidentally, inadvertently misled Parliament, man, which he has done.
It's a good mix of a law student and a politics student to do the podcast, Cause
Yeah. Do we mix together to make Kier Starmer? Is that what we do, really? Because obviously he's had political and legal careers.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about just the legal aspect of politics. It's just so important, the specific language that's used and how it works. Yeah.
And there's a lot of public outrage at the minute by people saying, oh, these people getting thrown out of Parliament for calling someone a liar when he clearly is a liar. Yes, but you can't. Although we would love to have free speech, going back to our last episode, and we would love for everyone to just say what's on their mind, it's not parliamentary.
Yes, I think it's different from free speech, because they are free to present evidence that he has misled Parliament, but they can't call him a liar. That's just... And plus, they weren't really giving their own details on the situation. It might seem repetitive if every leader of every party just says the same thing as the events of the whole thing, but they do that on purpose to show that they have an evidenced approach rather than an emotional approach. And it feels like Lee Anderson and Zara Sultana saw what we hear in universities about populism being all about emotion, and they took that and made it their playbook yesterday, and they really, really confirmed, let's say confirmed, but perhaps they really showed evidence that perhaps there's lots of emotion in that populist way of talking.
Of course, that's what you want to do when you're there asking a question in Parliament, is you want to build this tense momentum. You want to get the eyes from the people next to you.
Getting thrown out of Parliament is, I have to give it to them. It's a nice strategy to build new support.
Of course it is.
It's like a way of saying, they want to throw me out because I'm right. He's a liar. Oh, I was thrown out.
You're giving them more platform to build
exactly.
Inadvertently. They're good use of the word. Another prominent member of the House who had an interesting question yesterday was Diane Abbott.
Diane Abbott. As much as I'm not a fan of her politics, she was on fire that day. I mean, she. What was the speech?
This is the mother of the House, by the way.
Well, she's been there for a while.
She has been a Labour frontbencher under. Was it under Starmer? It was under Corbyn. She's very left of the party, big socialist views, she has had a relationship with Jeremy Corbyn, so this is the kind of person, building a picture of this kind of person.
She seems very respected in Parliament.
No, very respected, mother of the house, like I said, and she's not afraid to stand up there.
Well, now that she's independent.
Give it an independent, but she says to Kier Starmer that the substance of his statement is that he was not told about the appointment process. She then says, why did the Prime Minister not ask?
Yeah, given, and then she gave the examples of Mandelson being sacked from previous positions twice before.
Yeah, of course.
And she says, given this history, why didn't you ask? That was the best. I think that was the best speech.
That's a banger.
Best speech of the House yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of her, but on fire.
And you saw him get up, and he looked a little bit shaky and a bit red.
Oh yeah, Starmer's always been having his head in his hands the last few times he's been in Parliament, and there's one time his hand was like this. It's just
she sits with them, you know.
Yeah, because she definitely has many friends still in there. You know, she still has that ideological outlook as the left wing of Labour.
Of course, if Starmer were to go tomorrow, and we had a more left-looking Prime Minister, maybe Diana gets welcomed back into the party. Maybe she even joins them on the front benches.
I think so. I mean, given that she's so reliable in getting elected, and she has that, you know, respectability in Parliament, you know, despite her, you know, the allegations that she's racist towards white people or Jews. That was one of the sort of the controversies surrounding her.
Yeah.
But despite that, she's very respected because she's a skilled orator and very very level-headed.
Well, she is. I'm not. I disagree there. Level-headed. Maybe now, but there have been many years where she has not.
Yeah, in that sense, yes.
And
that's completely.
I'm not a massive Diana fan by any means, but I think that if you can get up there and give it to the guy that's standing about 10 feet away, you know, and and show him that you're not afraid.
I mean, especially, you know, it works especially well if you've been there since, you know, you've been there a couple of decades, and you know, Starmer's relatively new there.
Off topic, but back on Kier Starmer. How long does he have left?
I mean, we need to look at the rate of scandals. I mean, when was the last scandal that happened before Mandelson?
Angela Rayner. That was during, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was.
So they're coming out. So they're coming out once. That's not looking good.
I honestly couldn't tell you when the next one's going to be. It's like playing the lotto.
Yeah.
Except you probably have really good odds because at the rate this is going.
So it's as if you're suggesting we should have a bet.
I think he's gone. We are on the 21st of April. He gave his speech yesterday on the 20th of April. Personally, I thought Kemi Badenoch would have put the vote of no confidence to him yesterday.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought she did. And when we sat here in the kitchen watching it, I seriously thought.
Yeah, me too. That was very strongly voted.
I think people are just fed up at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I don't like Kier Starmer. I'm not saying I don't know about his personal life. I don't know him personally. You know who I do know doesn't like Kier Starmer? Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe has been slandering. I wouldn't say slander. I'm going to take that right back. Not slander.
That wasn't very parliamentary.
It wasn't very parliamentary of me. No, I inadvertently misled the viewers there. That's what I did. Yeah. Rupert Lowe really does not like that guy. Did you see his Instagram post the other day? It was like, I don't like him. I think he's this, that, and the other.
Yes.
And he should resign.
He does engage a little bit of populism at times, you know.
He doesn't like him, does he? At all?
Yeah.
He really doesn't like him.
Well, why would he? He's the complete opposite to him. I mean, to him, Starmer is the continuation of people like Alistair Campbell and Tony Blair, and he doesn't like them because they represent to him the Iraq War. They represent the sort of multicultural image of Britain that he believes is
European-tied Britain.
I wouldn't even say European. I would just say this very just very globalized Britain. And Britain like trying to act like
two different places. Like
I'm saying it ties too many places. Ties too many different identities to it.
Okay.
That's what he believes the centre does. Yeah.
And that's his opinion. He can have that opinion. What I think is that Kier Starmer personally isn't a bad guy. Like what he's done in office. We've said this before. You don't go to be prime minister for power. Personally, I don't think you do. I don't think you can. There's so much hard work in it.
That might
you
just
do
be
it.
you.
You
If I
do
was
it.
to become prime minister for power,
You couldn't. No one would vote for you. No offense. Kier Starmer did what he believed was right. He genuinely seems furious that he wasn't told about this appointment. This is where we got into the appointment process. The appointment process for, the old appointment process was that the government could name the appointee, and then they get vetted, and then they start their role in the post. What it's been changed to is that they have to be vetted completely by is it UKSB, the security vetting services. UKSB, they have to be completely vetted, then they can be announced, then they can be appointed. The whole issue and scandal has arrived from Sir Ollie Robinson, who was chief at the Foreign Office, chief of civil service at the Foreign Office, has basically said that they came under pressure from Downing Street because Downing Street had already announced Lord Mandelson. The problem is that if Sir Ollie Robinson goes to Downing Street and says, look, I know you've announced him, but we've just found out that he's borderline and he shouldn't be put in his post in America, then Downing Street look like fools. The Prime Minister looks like a fool. I wanted to ask you, would you rather look like a fool like that, or like this with the massive scandal and how it's blown up? I think I'd rather have a senior official come to me after I've announced it and say, look, we can't do this because vetting has turned up these red flags, than 2 years down the line get to here and find out that you find out that he was a security risk all along and that he never should have been appointed. I think for Kier Starmer, like we always say, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Knowing what will happen, God, you could solve everything in the world, couldn't you, really? But what happened in this specific situation has divided, not just number 10, but it's divided the civil service. Hasn't it, Matt?
Yeah. It's united Parliament, though.
It's united Parliament against Kier Starmer. We love to see Lib Dems and Conservatives working together, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, well, they did it quite well from 2010 to 2015. You know, one could say. I mean, they sort of fit together.
Back in day, as they say. Another interesting point I will make to you, Matt, is that Peter Mandelson continued to be a director of a company sympathising with the Kremlin well after the annexing of Crimea.
Wasn't that Sistema?
It was.
Well, that's a very crucial company there.
Where do you stand on the fact that Mandelson was a high-ranking executive?
Well, it's a security risk. I mean, given that such large companies are in sort of state capitalist systems, as they call them, that's just Russia, there's loads of massive companies with intimate ties with the government. If that's the case, he's a security risk. If he was an executive there, especially if it wasn't too long ago.
He was flagged. He was absolutely flagged by the UKSB, and I think using a traffic light system, green, amber, red, they found two red flags on Mandelson, and of course he'd already been named. So what can you do at that point? You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So Kier Starmer, I'd say rightfully, it should have been like this the whole time. Kier Starmer changed the vetting process so that they are vetted before announcements, which makes.
I mean, Jeremy Clarkson.
The most amount of sense.
Jeremy Clarkson picked these red flags up, without knowing, necessarily knowing all the facts,
God help us.
Yeah.
Jeremy Clarkson.
I think he should appoint our next Prime Minister.
You think? Yeah. Just Jeremy Clarkson?
I think he could do it pretty well. We're going to end our episode here, and thank you for watching. And we'll be back tomorrow with our video on the Strait of Hormuz and the crisis surrounding it.
Absolutely. We'll see you then.